My mentor invited me to a gala, didn't list my name, then handed me a $10,000 invoice for Dorian's suit and champagne. When I refused to pay, she said, "You owe us everything." I said, "No, I owe you nothing," and walked out. They didn't even put my name on the table. My name is Alara. I'm 35 years old, a sculptor based in Chicago. And last Thursday, I showed up to the kind of gala you only see in art magazines. Velvet-draped everything, champagne fountains, and ambient lighting that probably cost more than my entire studio rent for the year. I wasn't supposed to be there. Not really. But Margot, my mentor, patron, and self-declared guardian, had sent a text the night before. Be there. Bring something meaningful. No punctuation. Just a command. The kind I'd spent too long obeying. When I arrived at the venue, some restored opera house turned gallery, a valet took my coat and looked mildly impressed by the sculpture crate being wheeled in behind me. I caught a glimpse of the guest list by the door. Alara wasn't on it. That should have been my first clue. Inside, the room pulsed with soft violin music and the quiet buzz of networking. Waiters floated around with bite-sized art pieces on trays, and performance artists in chrome body paint moved in slow, synchronized gestures under a chandelier shaped like a bleeding heart. Everything screamed Dorian, and sure enough, there he was in the middle of it, Dorian Vale, 25, perfect teeth, hair like a shampoo commercial. My former student and now, the art world's new golden boy. He was holding court near a spotlighted wall of his newer, less inspired work. A group of wealthy donors hung on every word as he recounted some story about sculpting in silence for emotional purity. I recognized half of the anecdotes. I'd told him those stories back when he was still learning to hold a chisel. I wandered closer, wondering where I was supposed to stand. There was a long table set for the artists, all crisp place cards and expensive glassware. I scanned for my name. Nothing. A gallery assistant brushed past me, balancing a clipboard and 3 empty flutes. "Excuse me," I said. "Do you know if there's a—" "Oh," she interrupted, glancing at my badge. "You're not on the dinner list. Maybe check with the kitchen?" The kitchen. I laughed under my breath and stepped back. Across the room, Margot caught my eye from her seat at the head table. She gave a slow, pleased smile like a puppeteer watching her marionettes dance. I used to think that smile meant approval. Now I know better. I turned back just in time for Dorian to float over, arms open in mock surprise. "Alara," he grinned. "Didn't think you'd show." "I got your mentor's message," I said. He laughed and clinked his glass against mine. Mine was still full. He hadn't noticed. "I hope you brought something special. People are expecting fireworks tonight." Then he leaned in, all fake warmth and glossy charm. "So," he said, voice low, eyes twinkling like a game show host, "where's my gift?" I stared at him, dead quiet. "Oh come on," he teased, straightening. "You must have brought something." "You always do." I smiled then. "Small, cold, you'll see." The crate was massive. Not the kind you'd stick in a corner and ignore. This one demanded attention. All eyes turned as the gallery staff wheeled it in with cautious hands, like they were escorting royalty. It creaked slightly as it moved across the marble floors, the sound echoing under the vaulted ceiling. I stood off to the side, half-shadowed behind a column. My drink had gone warm. The moment had finally arrived. People crowded around as the lid was unlatched. Conversation slowed, camera phones rose. Even Margot looked up from her foie gras. She tilted her head like a hawk spotting prey. The assistants pulled the crate open, and there it was. A piece I had started 2 years ago. Uncommissioned. Unpaid. Just made. Layers of welded bronze and cast resin, folded in on themselves like a broken embrace. I'd never named it, but it had always been for Dorian. His silhouette appeared in front of the crowd, glass in hand, jaw slack. "Is that?" he said, eyes wide, already stepping forward. I let him drink it in. I wanted him to feel it, the weight of it, the craftsmanship. The months I spent bent over that piece, chipping and welding and sweating through grief and frustration he would never understand. "I knew you wouldn't forget," Dorian said, grinning. Wow, this is really mine?" A few guests clapped politely. Someone gasped. I could already hear the headlines. Golden Boy gifted monumental sculpture by former mentor. His moment. But not tonight. I stepped forward, calm and deliberate, stopping just shy of the crate. "No," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the murmurs. "It was for you. But it's no longer yours." Dorian blinked. "Wait, what?" I nodded at the handlers, who exchanged glances and then, slowly, began resealing the crate. Screws turning, wood groaning. The sculpture disappeared as quickly as it had come. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman near the back dropped her phone. "Is this a joke?" Dorian said, trying to laugh. It came out wrong, thin and nervous. "You're serious? You're taking it back?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "I'm keeping it," I said. Changed my mind. Margot was already rising from her seat, smoothing her dress like she could press the scandal back into place. She rushed over, her smile forced, whispering through her teeth. "Alara, darling, can we talk? In private?" "No need," I replied. "Everything's clear." The crate was wheeled back out of the gallery, disappearing through the same doors it came in. People whispered behind their glasses. A few looked at me differently now. Not with admiration, with confusion, maybe fear. "Good. Let them feel what it's like to be surprised. I should have left after the crate. Instead, I stood there too long, letting the crowd's whispers sink into my skin. I didn't flinch when people avoided eye contact. I didn't sip the champagne Margot's assistant offered with trembling hands. I just stood still, anchored in a place I never truly belonged. "Elara," Margot called sweetly, from behind me. I knew that voice. It only ever came before something unpleasant dressed up as an opportunity. She was already smiling when I turned. Dorian was at her side, flushed and sheepish, still trying to laugh the whole thing off like it hadn't bruised his ego. "Walk with us," she said, not asking. We ended up in a side corridor, near the catering staging area. The music was muffled here. You could almost pretend the gala didn't exist, if not for the faint scent of caviar and ice. Margot took a folded slip of paper from her clutch. "This isn't how I wanted to bring this up, darling," she said, like I had left her no choice. "But since you were such a visible part of tonight's program, it's only fair." She handed me the paper. It was an invoice for over $10,000. "What the hell is this?" I asked, staring at the line items. Lighting rentals, gallery staff, catering overages. Even Dorian's custom suit was on there. Margot's tone was gentle, patronizing. "Shared responsibility. We all have to pitch in for these events, especially as a family." I barked a dry laugh. "Family?" Dorian stepped in, casual and smug again, like nothing had happened. "Come on, Elara. You're the most established one here. You've had international exhibitions. You've been featured in ArtNet. It's just fair." "Fair," I repeated. "You mean like not giving me a seat at the artist table?" He shrugged. "We thought you'd want to blend in." No one else spoke. No one apologized. They just stood there, smiling like I should be flattered to be included in the bill. I folded the invoice and handed it back. "No," I said. "I'm not paying." Margot's face changed then. Just for a second, like a mask slipping, her smile hardened into something sour. "You owe us everything," she hissed. "No," I said again, this time turning and walking away. "I owe you nothing." And I meant it. A few days passed. I didn't answer texts. I didn't respond to Dorian's hollow, "Sorry if it came off wrong" DM. I didn't even check the gallery press coverage, though I knew it would be filled with vague language about an unexpected performance intervention. Then came the envelope, hand-delivered. No return address, but I recognized Margot's handwriting on the front. Just 3 words, scrawled with elegance that felt like a dare. "Dinner. Just us." I should have tossed it, but something in me, stubbornness, maybe curiosity, pulled me toward her estate anyway. I told myself it'd be the last time. Margot's house was just as I remembered, grand but tired. Velvet drapes, antique mirrors, that lingering scent of rosewood and secrets. A place full of things too fragile to touch. She greeted me at the door like nothing had happened. "Elara," she beamed, kissing both my cheeks like we were in Paris and not 3 days past a public betrayal. "You look thin. Sit. Let me feed you." I followed her into the dining room. The table was set like a stage, white linen, gold-rimmed plates, candles already lit. A roast sat untouched in the center. And then I saw him, Dorian, already seated, already smirking. I stopped. "I thought this was just us." Margot's smile twitched. "It is. The family. Come, sit. Let's talk." I didn't move. Dorian leaned back in his chair. "Don't be dramatic. You've avoided us long enough." Margot clapped her hands once. "Let's not drag this out. We want to offer an olive branch. A fresh start." I narrowed my eyes. "What kind of start?" She poured wine into my glass. "Dorian's been struggling with space. His creativity needs breathing room. And you've just acquired that stunning loft near the lake." I went cold. "My studio." "Yes," Margot said, as if it were obvious. "It's perfect for him. Temporary, of course. Just until he gets grounded again." I stared at them. First Margot, her soft eyes, full of practiced compassion. Then Dorian, spinning the stem of his wine glass like this was a casual dinner conversation. They meant it. They were actually trying to give him my space. "You're serious," I said flatly. Margot nodded. "Think of it as giving back. You've had your time. That was it. All the years, all the favors, all the quiet swallowing of pride. I'd let them use me, shape me, diminish me." I set my glass down. "No," I said. "He's not taking 1 inch of that studio." "Elara," Margot began. "No," I said again, louder now. "You've taken enough. My time, my work, my name. You propped him up with my bones and called it legacy. I'm done." Dorian scoffed. "You're being dramatic." I laughed, a bitter, sharp thing. "And you're being delusional. You think I owe you everything? You owe me. Without me, you'd still be chipping clay with a butter knife and crying about critiques." Margot's face dropped then, for real this time. No performance. No diplomacy. I stood up. "Don't call me again. Either of you." And I walked out. No coat. No goodbyes. Just silence. The kind I'd finally earned. "If you walk out, don't come back." Margot's voice followed me into the hallway, sharp and echoing. I didn't turn around. I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing my face. Behind me, Dorian let out a short, smug laugh. "She'll be back," he said, like he knew me. Like he still thought I was the girl who used to wait in the studio until midnight, sanding his clay sculptures while he flirted with gallery interns. I didn't answer. The front door clicked shut behind me with a sound that felt permanent. I walked down the cold stone steps and out into the night, heart pounding in my chest, not from fear, not even from anger anymore, but from something else. Relief. That night, I went home and changed the locks on my studio. I didn't cry. I didn't pace or second guess or call a friend to talk it out. I just took my keys, walked through the hall, and slipped the new ones into the door. Then I stood there for a moment, staring at the space that had cost me everything and finally felt like mine. The next morning, I did the rest. I blocked Margot's number, deleted every message Dorian ever sent me, removed myself from the gallery group chats, the alumni chain, the old list of emergency contacts on the artist fund we'd all contributed to once upon a time. I burned the bridge so cleanly it lit up the sky. Then came the silence. Not the kind that punishes, the kind that clears the air. No more unsolicited critiques. No more friendly advice from people who only called when they needed something. No more wondering if I'd been selfish for drawing a line. For the first time in years, I felt untethered. And it didn't feel lonely. It felt free. It didn't happen overnight. For the first few weeks, my phone barely buzzed. No emergencies. No last-minute requests. No guilt-tripped invitations disguised as opportunities. At first, the silence made me nervous. Like I'd missed something, or someone had gone behind my back to smear my name. But then something strange started to happen. People began to notice my work again. Not through Margot's curated circles or Dorian's press machine, but in a quieter, more genuine way. A gallery in Montreal reached out, said they'd been following my older installations, wanted to feature a full collection. A museum in Tokyo emailed a request for one of my early pieces. A small art school in Oregon asked if I'd speak to students about building a career without burning out. I said yes. But this time I set the terms. No compromises. No middlemen. No more passing credit to the people who used my talent as a ladder. And slowly, the money came too. More than I'd ever made under Margot's gallery umbrella. My commissions tripled. I hired an assistant, someone kind, thoughtful, nothing like the interns Margot used to parade in and out to stroke egos. I started traveling again. Not the desperate networking trips I used to fake enthusiasm for. Real trips. I spent 3 weeks in Lisbon working on a shoreline sculpture with local artists. I flew to Copenhagen and slept in a tiny rented attic with a view of the sea, sketching blueprints for pieces no one else would touch. And while my world got bigger, theirs started to shrink. I heard whispers, of course. You can't exist in the art world without gossip seeping through. Margot's gallery was losing backers. Sponsors pulled out. One by one, her top artists signed with new representation, the kind that didn't come with veiled threats and decades-old favors. Dorian? He burned through his money like it was made of paper, bought a vintage car, started 3 projects he never finished. Word was, he'd gone back to teaching workshops under a fake name to avoid the press. I watched it all unfold. And I didn't say a word. I didn't reach out. I didn't send a message or forward a contact or offer advice. I just let the silence do what it does best. Let things fall. Because I wasn't interested in revenge. I was busy building a life. Finally, mine. It started with a phone call I didn't answer. Then a voicemail. It's Margot. Please call back. It's important. I waited 3 days. Then came the email, subject line, opportunity for reconnection. I almost laughed. The body of the message was 5 short sentences, carefully worded and deeply uncomfortable. I knew Margot hadn't written it alone. The next day, I got the real message. It came from an unknown number, but I knew the voice immediately. Hey, Elara. It's Dorian. A pause. I know it's been a while, and I'm sorry for everything that happened. But I have this new vision, a personal studio, a community hub, something fresh. We just need a little help getting it off the ground. We were hoping you'd want to be part of it. Support it. Support me. I hit delete. Then the next morning, Margot called again. This time, she left numbers. The startup cost is just over $80,000. A modest investment for someone with your success. Modest. They'd come crawling back, but still couldn't resist the arrogance. That afternoon, I sent my reply. I kept it brief, simple, just enough rope. I'll fund it. On one condition, sign over your estate, full transfer, no games. I stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. My hands didn't shake. I felt nothing, not cruelty, not satisfaction, just clarity. Silence followed. Not the usual delay or polite buffer. This was stunned, gaping silence. The kind you can feel through the screen. An hour passed, then 2, then a day. Eventually, Margot replied. I'm aghast, truly disappointed. After all we did for you? No denial, no counteroffer, just hurt pride in a fancy dress. Dorian never responded, not directly, but someone posted a cryptic quote on his now private account. Some people sell their soul for peace, others, for profit. I smiled when I saw it, not because I was proud, but because I finally understood what power really looked like. Saying no, and not needing to explain why. They didn't take the deal. Of course they didn't. Margot would rather torch the gallery herself than hand over the estate. And Dorian? He probably still thought someone else would come save him. Someone always had, after all. Until now. The final message came 3 weeks later. No greeting, no punctuation. You've destroyed this family. That was it. No signature, but I didn't need one. I didn't reply. By then, word had spread, quietly, but thoroughly. Margot's gallery had lost its third investor in 2 months. Her assistant posted a thinly veiled job hunting announcement online. One of her artists wrote a blog post titled The Cost of Legacy and left her name out of it, but barely. It took less than a season for the gallery to close. Officially, it was framed as a graceful retirement. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. Lawsuits over unpaid contracts. A cancelled partnership with a design school. Clients asking for refunds, for apologies, for answers. And Margot? She started selling off pieces of the estate. First the guest house, then the garden sculptures. Then, finally, the house itself went on the market, the one where she'd thrown that absurd apology dinner, where I'd sat across from her and Dorian while they asked me to give away everything I'd earned. Dorian disappeared from social media entirely. The gossip was relentless, rumors of maxed out credit cards, fights with gallery reps, a mental health sabbatical that looked suspiciously like a nervous breakdown. One artist friend sent me a photo from an exhibit in San Diego. A shadowy figure tucked into a back corner, clearing tables. "Is this him?" she wrote. I didn't answer. Instead, I booked a retreat. 10 days, no phone, no email, no obligations. Just a cabin near the ocean, the scent of pine and salt in the air, and a sketchbook I hadn't touched in months. For the first time, I didn't feel like running away from something. I wasn't licking wounds or hiding from ghosts. I wasn't watching the destruction with glee or guilt. I was simply gone. And they couldn't reach me. Not because I blocked them, not because I vanished, but because they were still playing a game I'd already walked away from. The family was gone, the gallery was gone, the golden boy had faded, and I was still rising. 1 year later, I sat by the sea with a journal in my lap and the sun warming my knees. The cottage I rented was barely a blip on the map, a 2-bedroom hideaway in Mendocino, California, perched on a bluff with nothing but wind and gulls for company. I hadn't planned to stay this long. I'd booked it for a month. I was on my 8th. Some mornings I sculpted, others I read. Most days I walked the cliff trails barefoot with clay dust still on my hands. I taught an occasional virtual seminar for a university in Florence. I hosted a mentorship circle online, once a week, for younger artists. I picked who joined. No more prodigies, no more Dorians. I was no longer looking over my shoulder, and I never looked back. That morning, I flipped through pages of the leather-bound journal I started the day after Margot's gallery folded. The entries were full of reflections, sketches, odd thoughts, and memories I hadn't planned to keep. I paused on a page from 6 months ago, a short entry in my own handwriting. I thought I'd miss them. I don't. I thought I'd be angry. I'm not. I thought I'd feel hollow. But somehow, I feel new. I smiled. A ding came from my phone, the only device I still let buzz during journaling hours. I glanced at it, ready to silence it. It was a text, from a number I hadn't deleted, but had long forgotten. Margot, hope you're proud. We lost everything. No punctuation, no flourish, just 6 flat words. I stared at the screen. The waves crashed below, indifferent. I didn't feel satisfaction, not exactly, and I certainly didn't feel sorry. Mostly, I felt like I'd dodged a fire that had burned for years without me realizing I was the kindling. I held my finger over the screen for a second, then pressed delete. No reply. No closure, just, done. I closed the journal. I stood up, barefoot on the sun-warmed wood of the porch, and walked down the path toward the water. It didn't matter what Margot had lost. I wasn't part of it anymore. This, the open air, the salt in the wind, the quiet weight of peace in my chest, this was mine. I walked all the way to the edge of the bluff, where the world dropped away and the ocean began. Then I smiled. And I kept walking.